so much for everyone who has subscribed so far, and if you have not given me a subscribe, you can do so below, as I'm sure you would already know, and give me a like as well. A lot of my channel is about health and wellness and my own spirituality and things like that. I do throw in there a couple of other things. Sometimes I have a little song and dance and be a bit of a hooligan, like a larrikin, and just, you know, whatever, but I also want to educate you guys on quite a few other things as well, especially sociological. I'm just going to show you like a little bit of when I get my DNA results, this will all make sense as to why I love to smudge stick. It all makes sense. I'm going to go all through all of it with you, but in the meantime, I'm just going to show you some footage of what I shot 3 weeks ago, so you're going to understand why I did this DNA test result, okay? So today, yay, my DNA kits arrived. I've got Ancestry.com and 23andMe, and I'm going to do both. Spit in the tube on both. Like, I did not know. I thought that you just get your results and then you can search people, or the option is there, you know, if you want to contact people who your DNA matches. But no, I get the email like ding 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 ding, your mother, and I was like, oh no. So I instantly checked what my results were and then deactivated my account because, well, okay guys, my mother and I do not have any communication at all. So anyway, I contacted Ancestry.com and I said to them, can I still check the actual DNA bit? Because I'm only really interested in the DNA bit, not like who I'm related to. And they said there is a section on there that show up to anybody else, and I thought, oh no. So they were very, very kind, and they've sent me a replacement kit so that I can do that again and get my results. It came really, really fast. I thought it would have come from America, but it didn't. It actually came from Sydney, and it came really, really fast. And then I also decided to order the 23andMe one. Now, when I ordered the 23andMe one, I initially thought I would get the medical report, because you can get the medical report, which is very, very important, I feel, because you can say if you're a carrier for anything. Well, they don't test for everything, but a lot of common, really bad, like if you're a carrier for, say, I don't know, I think maybe cystic fibrosis and just other things in there. So I ordered this one, and now, look, I did not realize that you cannot order the medical side of it unless you are in certain countries like the United States. And had I known that, I probably would have had it sent to my girlfriend's house in America, who would have sent it over to me and then done it that way. Because to get that same blood test done in Australia, it's about $700. The reason that I'm finding it very amusing is because once upon a time, I used to get paid a lot of money for my spit, and now I'm paying people to send off my spit too. You need to wait 30 minutes after eating or drinking anything before you can do these, like spit in the things. And it has been at least 30 minutes. I brush my teeth. So you can't brush your teeth. I'm sure you can have water. And I'm going to spit in both of these canisters here. Lovely. Spit. Hang on a minute, I don't understand. Some other like liquid stuff that goes on in there. So I guess it says close the funnel. So that must pour something in there that preserves your spit. Oh, that's a lot of spit I got to spit in there. And then I've got to spit in this one too. Oh yeah, that's got that liquid in that side bit. I'm sure there's lots of air bubbles too. My spit is looking kind of milky. So why, like, I think it's very important to know your DNA. So when I was like 6 years old, I had, like, you know, you get gastro sometimes. I was like, had a bit of a vomit, and my mother had to do something that day. So she decided to give me her Maxolon. And if you know what Maxolon is, it's a medication that they give people who are very nauseous, and to stop you from having vomiting so that you don't become dehydrated, because when you get dehydrated, you risk kidney failure and things like that. So I can't even recall that I was that bad, but she wanted to make sure that I did go to school that day because she had stuff to do. So she kept giving me Maxolon, like repetitive Maxolon, and I could honestly start feeling like this. Like I could feel my head was like doing things, but I kind of just ignored it. I was like 6 years old. I just ignored it. I was at school and my teacher was doing a presentation of something. We were all sitting on the floor, and suddenly my head just went to the back of the class, and I was like, it was right back, and I started shaking. And then she called out my name to say like, what's no. Suddenly the ambulance came. And this particular time, guys, we were living in, I was living in a town called Tom Price, and it's in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. It's a really, really tiny, tiny, tiny little town. The hospital did not have pediatric. I was taken to that hospital for a little while, and then I was taken, it was a bit of an adventure. I was taken by the flying doctors. I went in it was so exciting, although I was really, really sick. So in the flying doctors to Port Hedland, where they had a proper pediatric ward, which is a children's ward. The reason that I was going all this was because I had what is called a dystonic reaction to Maxolon. Now, dystonic reaction is kind of like, let's just put it in a nutshell, it's an adverse reaction, allergic reaction, pretty much allergic to it. Now, we do know now that it happens a lot to children who are given, you know, they're not meant to take the Maxolon. It's been prescribed to them by a doctor or been prescribed to their parent or an adult, and the adult has decided to give it to that child. And it is usually always children of either Asian origin or Eastern European. And look, Eastern Europe is very close to Mongolia, and back like 400 or 500 years ago, the Mongols, like Genghis Khan, like went inside of Eastern Europe, murdered a whole heap of guys and raped a lot of women. So therefore, a lot of Eastern Europeans have Asian features, which is why I am very interested to know about my own DNA, because my grandmother, she told us that she was Romanian. Well, in actual fact, I believe that she was in an orphanage in Romania. They migrated there. But what we found out when she passed away was that she's Jewish, and her last name was Ukrainian. Now, when I did this DNA test last year, it came up with a lot of Eastern European in me. And my grandfather, he said he's German, and he really looks Polish. It's just the time, like you can understand, both my grandparents are in the war. My great-grandfather was bombed in the war, like that's how he died. My great-grandmother, my grandmother's mother, died, and my grandmother was in an orphanage because at 2 years old, because she was shot in the leg, and then she died of sepsis because the infection in her leg traveled through the body. So this was like you can understand like why people were lying about their ethnicity during that era, because there was genocide and war, and they were like saving their life. A lot of people even changed their last name to German last names. I think I've got enough spit, to be quite honest. That dystonic reaction, which was the allergic reaction to Maxolon, what we do know is that once it happens once to you, you never get it again. And I have taken Maxolon, you know, to be quite honest, I've taken it quite a few times since then when I've had very bad gastro or something and I just cannot keep fluids down. Oh yeah, all that. Cannot keep fluids down. And then you just screw this on as so. And in order to prevent dehydration and become kidney failure, just pop that in the biohazard bag. Specimen bag. Take my spit, people. Take my spit. That's one done. So in order to, you only get it once in your life. And I've taken it on other times when I've been really, really nauseous and you can't keep fluids down. When you can't keep fluids down when you're really sick, you really need something else. I went to Darwin last year on a vacation and I did a tour, as you do when you're on vacation. So I did a tour. Ancestry.com test was because he told us a very incredible story about how he found out he was Aboriginal because he was adopted out in the 1970s because his mother fell pregnant with him out of wedlock, and they must have been Catholic, or I don't know, something happened. But he always felt he had a lot of big cultural connection with the Aboriginal people, and he could never work out why, because he was adopted out and he didn't know his biological background. Now, he did an ancestry DNA test, linked him to biological relatives of his in Tasmania, and then he found out they didn't even know themselves. The lady that got in contact with him did not even know, because it was quite a while, like it was a couple of generations back. But they found out that, yes, they do have Aboriginal heritage. So it's very important to know your DNA, because it often explains a lot about why you like certain things, why you like certain foods, why you like certain music, why you even like to dance, why you're artistic. Well, it puts pieces to the puzzle. So tell you what, just an easier way to extract spit. Well, I can think of an easier way, but I'm not tired enough. Don't lose my DNA. Okay. Don't lose my DNA. You know what? I know that there's a lot of conspiracy theories behind these tests, and probably they're right, but I don't really care unless you're planning on going out and, you know, doing something you shouldn't be doing and you don't want your DNA out there. Then, like, who really cares, really? If off we go. So, my 2 jars of spit. Up they're going. Stay tuned. Let's find out if I'm really Russian, because everyone also asks if I'm Russian and Eurasian. But I guess, you know, the kind of two are like together on, you know, in that subcontinental region after all. So let's find out if I'm really Eurasian or really Russian. This is absolutely hilarious. So just to like put it in a nutshell, if you know anyone in America and you want to do the health report, I recommend having like have the kit sent to your friends and have the friends send it to you, and then spit and everything, send it back to you. Report done from 23andMe if you're an American citizen. Or maybe Canadian too, but definitely not in Australia, and I don't know about any parts of the world. But other than that, I do find that 23andMe was a much better, I just preferred, like, I guess like Ancestry.com is really good if you want to generate a family tree and really generate that family tree, which is not really on 23andMe. They don't really have that feature. I mean, they could, but there's a lot more users on Ancestry.com. So if you're really, really trying to find something and pinpoint something, I guess like go Ancestry.com. But what I really particularly liked about the results for 23andMe is they itemized which country that is specific to your DNA, as opposed to Ancestry.com, which gave as a region. So my results were a little bit conflicting with Ancestry.com and 23andMe, and not majorly conflicting, but to the point, I did actually find that 23andMe is more specific and more localized. For example, like, so they all said Irish, like that was a no-brainer. It was like 43% Irish between both, because yeah, my mother's Irish. That was like whatever. But in the 23andMe one, for example, it will break down each individual country. So Eastern European, now this is where the funniest thing was. Like everyone kind of like, you know, there's a lot of stories around where you can like, you know, people find out that they have been adopted and they've been lied to their whole entire life. And people have found out that they've been switched at birth and they've found out. So to date, the only real like revelation that I have had to divulge to my aunt was that my grandmother was a liar. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Surprise! So pretty much like, I guess it's kind of, you know, when we go back to war and we go back to genocide, people didn't identify their true ethnicity to protect themselves. Okay, so when she was saying that she is Austrian Romanian, she was only just protecting herself to be gassed so she wasn't gassed by the Germans. So anyway, but I was always questioning how come, like literally I go overseas and everyone asks me if I'm Russian. Even I've had Russians come up to me and speak to me in Russian when I was in Thailand once, thinking that I'm Russian. Lots of everywhere I go, people are you Russian? Are you Russian? Are you Russian? I'm like, no, I'm not Russian. DNA test results do not lie. I'm not Russian. It said, that's why I like 23andMe, because it actually itemizes each country. Not Russian, but it is Polish Ukrainian. So my grandmother was lying. She was not Austrian Romanian. She's Polish Ukrainian. And I guess her family did migrate to Romania, which was what I said. I said, just because they migrated to Romania does not mean that they were Romanian, because Romania is a country, it's made up of a lot of immigrants. And how come her last name was Ukrainian? But my auntie was swearing like, honestly, for so long. You know, it is what it is, and whatever. So I'm like, this was so weird, but I came up with like Native American, which is really weird, but I guess it's kind of like why, one, I really like tribal music, and two, why I smudge stick like all the time. I just love to smudge my house. I love to smudge myself, and I guess, you know, we're kind of like drawn to what our heritage is. Hey Cher, maybe Cher's my long lost ancestor, you know, being a Native American and all. Are certain ethnic groups that do have a recessive gene, and after a few generations that gene will no longer appear in you and it will no longer skip generations. So once it's gone, it's completely gone. Other DNA on the other hand, like I guess a Native American DNA and also Asian genes are very, very strong. If you have a child with an Asian, a Chinese, years later, like generations later, you could have, even if you're both Caucasian, you could have a baby that looks completely Chinese because that gene is so strong and it skips generations. So to go back to, am I Eurasian? Am I? Aren't I? Am I? Aren't I? So if you study history, and it did turn up in my DNA that along with the Native American, there's like a very, very small percentage of Northern Asian, which is Mongolian. And if you study history, you would know that Genghis Khan and the Mongols conquered all of Eastern Europe. Well, himself, he stayed within his castle or his palace. But his empire conquered a lot of Eastern Europe, which would be the Ukraine and all that part, killed a lot of men, raped a lot of women, and their gene just like shuffles along through. So there are a lot of people who are of your Eastern European descent who have what I have, which is the high cheekbones, the Asian looking eyes. No, we don't identify as Eurasian because we are Europeans, but we do have Asian appearance. And that's because I guess, you know, somewhere along the line at some particular point, I mean, they are countries that are joined together. So there was a lot of like, you know, migrating of people back and forth because that's just what they did. So to answer all your questions, guys, am I Asian? Like all the search things are, you are my favorite Asian, you're Asian, you're Asian, you're Asian. No, I'm not. And then it also came up as well, like my grandfather was, oh no, German, and where he was meant to be from, but it actually ended up being like from a different region completely. What I do find really hilarious about like all of this is that when you identify with your matches, it says how much of a centimeter you are with your matches. So for example, you match with this person, it could be your fourth cousin, but you match with them 30 centimeters. I'm like, which 30 centimeters? Is it my pinky finger 30 centimeters? Well, 30 centimeters is quite a lot actually when you think about it. But which 30 centimeters of me do we have the same? I've only had one person on there that I've actually looked, and I think we identify as a third cousin. I'm like, wow, that really looks like my mother. And I actually kind of freak out and I'm going, ooh. I get the goosebumps. But you know, it's kind of weird too. It's like, oh, you know, wow, I'm related to all these people all over the world. I know most of it is very, very distant, but like literally I have relatives everywhere. And the most number of relatives that I had on 23andMe were all in the United States. Like I've had so many relatives in the United States. It's not even funny. Of everywhere in the world, they're Americans. I guess like they like left Europe before everyone else went to America. Far out, man. I tell you what, it's funny. But I'm going to keep you updated and see if I get any like cans out of the worms that like emerge from all of this too. Because I know I've had stories like my mate Joey that I told you about. He's had a whole bunch of can of worms open with his DNA test results. Oh, by the way, guys, if you're ever up in Darwin, I'll show you a photo of me and my friend Joey. And if you're ever there, contact a tour guide called Way Outback Tours, and Joey will take you on a tour of, he goes to Litchfield National Park. And Joey is the one with the really incredible story that when he did his DNA test results, it answered so many questions for him because he was in the forced adoption in the 1970s. That's a story for another topic, but pretty much there was a whole bunch of forced adoption. So a lot of the Anglican church, a lot of the Catholic church were, you know, if people had children out of wedlock or fell pregnant out of wedlock, they were forced adoption. So they were sent to the hospital, drugged out of their brains, the mothers, handcuffed to the beds, and just like the babies taken away and forced adoption. They didn't know that. A lot of them were told even that their children had passed away during birth. It was really horrific what happened in that era within this country. So there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't have their identity because they were of that era, and these DNA tests are like uncovering a whole bunch of like, they're pretty much solving where did I come from, you know, feeling, because, you know, your DNA is your DNA, and it's like, well, why we like certain things, why we like certain music, why we like certain foods, you know, you can't change your DNA. Your DNA is your DNA, right? Although there are like certain studies that have proven to change your DNA as a behavioral thing. As a behavior, you can change your DNA, but not as you know, your ancestry. You can't change your ancestry. So anyway, if you're ever up in the top end, Joey at Way Outback Tours is a photo of Joey and I when I was in Darwin last year, and he can paint you up. You just ask him to say, hey Joey, can you paint me up? And he'll paint you up too. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. And I guess that's like my comparison between the 23andMe and the Ancestry.com. I guess it's really what you're interested in, is if you're in more of a localized study, or you pretty much you want to find out your own heritage and find your long lost ancestors, because there definitely are more people on Ancestry.com than 23andMe. But I did prefer 23andMe just because it gave more localized things, and I'm not really interested in finding my long lost ancestors, to be quite frank. Like, I'm more interested in finding out like where actually did I come from in a more pinpointed sense. So I don't know, I guess up to you. Good luck.